the Governor for St. Kitts and Nevis, Mrs. Hillary Hazel. Let's welcome the Governor for St. Lucia, the Honorable Nigel Joseph. Gentlemen, the Governor for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Camilo Gonzalez. The Governor for Suriname, the Honorable Gilmore Oxrad. Trinidad and Tobago, Honorable Camille Roberts. Welcome the Governor for the United Kingdom. That's the City Governor for the United Kingdom. This is Geraldine O'Connor.
Caicus, our country firm and free. Our allegiance, Caicus, we pledge and we affirm. Our people forged and blend with multiplicity of race and kind and creed and tongue, united by Turks and Caicus, our country firm and free. Our allegiance, Turks and Caicus, we pledge and we affirm. We stand with courage brave to maintain this land of ours, with islands scattered here and there, trusting God we stand. Certain Caicus, our country firm and free. Our allegiance, certain Caicus, we pledge and we affirm. Our allegiance, Turks and Caicus, we pledge and we affirm.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, bless these proceedings. We have Pastor Andrew Stroh.
Please bow your heads. Our Father and our God, we give you thanks for this day, a day that you have made. We thank you, Father, that you are the creator of heaven and earth and these beautiful by nature Turks and Caicos Islands. You are the omnipotent, the omniscient one, the omnipresent God, and it is to you we submit this prayer today. We thank all the delegates to these shores safely for this 47th Board of Governor meeting of the Caribbean Development Bank. We invoke your presence, Lord, into these proceedings. Guide it. Grant of your wisdom. I pray, Lord, that you would inject in every heart and mind that wisdom that comes from above by your Spirit. We ask, O God, that you would guide these proceedings. Let it go according to plan. Let there be no hindrances. And I pray that the success that will be achieved here will be even beyond that which was anticipated. God, I humbly submit this prayer to you today, because if you are not involved in it, what we do would be in vain. We trust you as the source of all things, and you have allowed us to be stewards, Lord, of what you have placed in our hands here on earth. So I pray, dear Father, that we would see ourselves as good stewards and operate accordingly. Bless again, I pray, these proceedings. And I pray, dear God of peace that is beyond human understanding, that your Spirit would remain with us throughout. In the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, and in the name of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Amen.
Thank you very much, Pastor Andrew Stroh. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we turn the proceedings over to the Chairman of the Board of Governors, your own Premier, the Honorable Charlene Cartwright Roberts.
Good morning. Good morning. I now call to order the 47th Annual Meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank. And I'm going to ask you to inconvenience yourself again for me, please, as we be upstanding to receive the welcome address by His Excellency Dr. John Freeman, Governor of the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's done. Let me begin by acknowledging you, Madam Chair, Mr. President of the CDB, Governors of the CDB, Premiers, Chief Ministers and Ministers, ladies and gentlemen. As Governor of the Turks and Caicos Islands, it is an honor and a pleasure to welcome all of you participating in the CDB meeting this week, warmly and sincerely, to these islands, our home. The CDB has since its foundation sought to, and I quote, contribute to the harmonious growth and development of the Caribbean region. In its mission statement, the bank set out its intention to be the leading catalyst for development resources into the region. The bank thus intended from its inception to be a vector for development and an instrument for the improvement of individual lives. Your meeting here this week will, I am sure, further contribute to those objectives. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, we live, and it is of course now a cliche to say so, in a globalizing world. But the point I wish to make is that it is a world, an international system of states, in which regions continue to provide a point of connection, a lever for mutual assistance, a mechanism for development in the mutual interests of all countries and citizens in each region. Regions, not least the gloriously diverse and wonderfully endowed by nature Caribbean region, can make a difference to the well-being of the countries and people within them. The countries of this region are neighbours, and as such, mutual supports. And no one understands a region better than the people of the region themselves. The CDB continues to demonstrate how much can be achieved through mutuality and regional solidarity. Madam Chair, inevitably development here, as elsewhere in the world, in this region, is uneven, but there is a common endeavour which the CDB reflects and promotes. As the bank's strategic plan states, and I quote, "The objective is to reduce inequality and halve the incidence of extreme poverty by the end of 2025, and to do so through support for inclusion and sustainable growth and by promoting good governance." It is not, of course, an accident or an incidental thought that sustainable growth and good governance are linked in this way. You cannot have the one without the other. Here in these islands, in the Turks and Caicos, there is recognition that sustainable growth is only achievable when supported by good governance. I am proud, as I am sure all those who live in these islands, that Turks and Caicos is this week playing its part in the taking forward of the CDB's mission. That Turks and Caicos is contributing through the distinguished chairmanship of the territory's Premier and Finance Minister, Honourable Charlene Cartwright Robinson, that is to say you, Madam Chair, to the objectives of the bank and to the development of its current programmes and engagement in the Caribbean region. And as Governor, I cannot fail but refer with due pride to the modest but steady way in which Turks and Caicos is itself contributing to wider prosperity in the region. Official estimates and statistics show that GDP growth in these islands is set to continue on its current upward path in the year ahead, and the external ratings for the country continue to be such as to attract further investment into the country. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude my remarks by expressing the hope that this meeting in TCI will above all be an opportunity for fruitful discussions and for the advancement of the strategic agenda of the CDB. In short, that it may serve to promote the common good in this region. But I hope also, and in a lighter note, that participants' eyes, from time to time and amidst all the important discussions on which you will be engaged, may be lifted to gaze upon the beauties of these islands, the islands which are hosting your meeting this week, and that you will be persuaded to come back and visit us again. Thank you, and my best wishes for your fruitful meeting.
Thank you, Your Excellency, members of the clergy, Your Excellency, Governor of the Turks and Caicos Islands, Dr. John Freeman, Premier of Montserrat, Honorable Donaldson Romeo, Chief Minister Anguilla, Honorable Victor Banks, Dr. Warren Smith, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, members of the Turks and Caicos Islands Cabinet, Your Ladyship Chief Justice, Her Excellency Deputy Governor, His Honor the Speaker, fellow parliamentarians, special recognition of the Honorable Hugh Derrick Taylor, former Chief Minister for the Turks and Caicos Islands and Minister of Finance, governors of the Caribbean Development Bank, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of the Board of Directors of CDB, senior managers, Turks and Caicos Islands Civil Service, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the government and the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands, I join His Excellency the Governor in extending yet again another warm welcome to the attendees and trust that you have found your visit thus far to be most enjoyable. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for the Turks and Caicos to host the 47th annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank and to serve as chair for this meeting. The Caribbean Development Bank plays a very intricate role in the continued economic advancement of the Turks and Caicos Islands and many of its borrowing member countries. The bank, with its proficiency in assistance through concessionary financing, technical assistance, and grants, has significantly assisted member countries in its economic growth and development. Within the Turks and Caicos Islands, CDB has assisted substantially with various infrastructure developments within the educational sector through the Early Childhood Facility and in the past through the upgrading of our National Community College. The bank has in the past provided concessionary loans to assist in the development of the Turks and Caicos Islands MSME sector and also assisted in the social programs that has aided in the reduction of poverty within these islands. It should be highlighted that we have been able to garner the assistance of the bank in the drafting of our country's strategy paper and also the continued assistance in the formation of our medium-term strategy document. I am happy to announce that most recently the bank has graciously agreed to assist with a technical assistance loan for the climate resilient coastal protection and management, a project that will be very important to us. We are well aware that this is a new era, one of change, and also one in which, when we appreciate the changing and dynamics of the knowledge economy, the world economics are constantly evolving, and it is imperative that we in the Caribbean region continue to grow, to share our ideas, create alliances, and to foster integration. The theme of this year's conference, Integration, Trade and Growth, is most befitting, as I am of the belief that economic integration within the Caribbean can cause an increase in the region's rate of growth. Additionally, close integration can be achievable by increasing trade in goods as well as ideas. It is assuring to know that we, as borrowing member countries of the bank, have available to us the resources and expertise of the bank to assist us in realizing our visions regarding trade, integration, and economic growth. It is also comforting to know that through the various fruitions the bank continues to meet these types of needs. As you know, much work goes into the hosting of this meeting, and we have been diligent about meeting every necessary provision for its accommodation. We certainly hope that the arrangements that have been put in place for hosting of this meeting will meet with your expectations, in fact, exceed them. Indeed, we want you to be comfortable, productive, excited, and pleased. Additionally, we want to ensure that you efficiently and effectively execute your roles as representatives of your country at this meeting. Providenciales, Turks and Caicos Islands, is an exotic and beautiful place with warm and friendly people. Dare I also say, the consistently voted world's best beach and island. So please, do take the opportunity to enjoy our sun, sand, and sea during our stay. And I would also like to recognize at this time my husband, who is in the audience, and that is the Right Honorable Lon Robinson. As chairman of this 47th Annual Board of Governors meeting, representing the government and people of the Turks and Caicos Islands, I hereby declare this meeting officially open and do welcome each and every one of you to these beautiful, by nature, Turks and Caicos Islands. Thank you, everyone. I now invite replies to the welcome address. I call on the Governor for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who will reply on behalf of the borrowing member countries. I would invite you to come to the podium, please.
Good morning. The Honorable Charlene Cartwright Robinson, Premier of the Turks and Caicos Islands, and your esteemed government, other distinguished heads of state and government, honorable ministers, Dr. Warren Smith, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Chairman of the Board of Governors, fellow governors, directors, members of the bank staff, members of the diplomatic corps, specially invited guests, the media, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me first to begin by expressing condolences and solidarity with the government and people of the United Kingdom, a non-regional member of this Caribbean Development Bank, as they grapple with the aftermath of an horrific homegrown terror attack. As we condemn this barbarism in the strongest possible terms, even the most casual glance through the pages of history will fortify us with the certainty that the people of the United Kingdom will emerge from this murderous assault unbowed, unafraid, and united in their collective resolve. Madam Chair, I am honored to be afforded the opportunity to respond to your welcome address on behalf of the borrowing member countries of the Caribbean Development Bank. Permit me first to express our collective delight with the hospitality of the government and people of the Turks and Caicos Islands, and our appreciation with the uniformly superlative arrangements that have made this 47th meeting of the Caribbean Development Bank something of a guilty pleasure. It would be difficult for many of us to convince our respective bosses or electorates that serious work is possible while ensconced in such luxury. In the time-honored tradition of politicians taking credit for successes to which they did not contribute, I am happy to inform you that the combination of familial warmth, boundless beauty, and peerless professionalism that you are experiencing today is a unique and consistent characteristic of all small Caribbean archipelagos, much like St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I want to thank also the beautiful and talented high school students who treated us to that stirring rendition of the national song of the Turks and Caicos. Madam Chair, this 47th annual meeting occurs at a moment of breathless global changes that present myriad potential challenges and opportunities to our region's collective developmental aspirations. To our north, political changes have ushered in new methods and priorities in the philosophy of global cooperation. To our south, various regional members of our bank face political and economic challenges that require urgent, internal, and sovereign solutions. To our east, the threads that bind the world's most successful integration movement have frayed, with as yet unforeseen consequences. Globally, climate change, commodity prices, and the continuing stuttering recovery from the world economic and financial crisis all shape the answer to the underlying question that animates this gathering. How do we promote inclusive growth, or increase it, and successfully pursue sustainable development in these countries, given our small size, our vulnerabilities, our high debt burdens, and our shrinking fiscal space? Undoubtedly, we have asked this question and pondered on this challenge in many ways and in many times over the course of the bank's 47 years. Sometimes the task before us seems daunting. For example, in my own country, it appears that no sooner have we managed to rebuild a bridge or a road which was damaged in the last hurricane season, that another stronger storm or hurricane comes along, forcing us to start the process all over again. Nothing is more discouraging than borrowing to rebuild infrastructure before you have paid off the loan that facilitated its original construction. Thankfully, Madam Chair, even as we face these challenges, we are resolute. We in this Caribbean have a long and proud history of resilience in the face of sometimes unimaginable adversity. We have learned well the lessons from those struggles, and we will, together with the help of all member countries and our development partners, continue to work towards advancing the development of the Caribbean region. Madam Chair, I am not particularly fond of the acronym CDB because it glosses over two most important words: Caribbean and development. This institution must first and foremost be a Caribbean one, not merely in its location or its membership, but in its principles, its focus, and its unique understanding of our history, our characteristics, our limitations, and our immense possibilities. This Caribbeanness cannot be excised under the guise of reform or modernization or any such similar positive-sounding euphemism. There are many development banks. There is only one Caribbean Development Bank. Similarly, development must continue to excite and animate the bank's philosophy and action. We must eschew nibbling on the margins of development and boldly pursue transformative social and economic change that makes tangible difference to the lives and livelihoods of Caribbean citizens. In these unusual times, business as usual is not an option. Today, Caribbean development means taking account of our country's commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals, which cannot be achieved on the fly or on the cheap. It means grappling with the cross-cutting costs and impacts of climate change, which affect our region uniquely. It means accelerating progress to green economies of renewable energy and post-crisis economies that build upon our strengths in tourism, but expand on the development potential inherent in agriculture, information communication technology, regional integration and trade, and the creative industries. Development means policy formulation that addresses our needs and particularities, not simply repackaging the one-size-fits-all prescriptions imported from abroad. And in our context, development also means implementation, not as an individual problem of individual borrowing countries, but as a part of the central mission and indeed part of the responsibility of the Caribbean Development Bank itself. Thankfully, the Caribbean Development Bank has proven itself time and again to be a pillar of strength and support in our thrust towards that development. It has been faithful over these last 47 years to its purpose of contributing to the harmonious economic growth and development of the member countries of the Caribbean. And it has demonstrated that it understands our problems, our challenges, and our issues. Our Caribbean Development Bank knows our countries, and we value its work. It is therefore important for us to continue to support and further develop this vital partnership, which can only redound to the benefit of all our members. Over the last 6 or so years, the bank has benefited immensely from the steady leadership of its president, Dr. Warren Smith. We have seen an expansion of membership, new development tools, sharper focus on regional and sub-regional specificities. We look forward to hearing of even greater progress in these very important areas. Madam Chair, I end as I begin by expressing gratitude on behalf of all borrowing member countries to the Caribbean Development Bank for its invaluable support to our development, and thanking the government and people of the Turks and Caicos Islands for their magnificent hospitality. In surroundings such as these, the only credible defense against the charge of enjoying ourselves a bit too much is to emerge from this meeting refocused, re-energized, and with tangible developmental initiatives that will benefit our entire Caribbean civilization. I thank you for your attention, Madam Chair.
I wish to thank the Governor for St. Vincent and the Grenadines for his reply on behalf of the borrowing member countries. And now I invite the Governor for Venezuela to give the reply on behalf of the regional non-borrowing members.
Thank you very much, Madam. The Excellency Governor John Freeman and Honorable Premier Charlene Cartwright-Robinson of Turk and Caicos Islands, Honorable Donaldson Romeo, Premier of Montserrat, Honorable Victor Banks, Chief Minister of Anguilla, Dr. Warren Smith, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, not CDB, and Mr. Alfredo de Brigar Perez, Alternate Temporal Governor of Colombia, in representation of the Vice Presidency of the non-borrowing member countries, Mr. Dan Bella, Alternate Temporal Governor of Canada, Caribbean Development Bank management and staff, members of the diplomatic corps, other governments of the CDB, and distinguished guests. I have the great pleasure to respond to the warm welcome of Her Excellency Charlene Cartwright-Robinson on behalf of the non-borrowing member countries of the Caribbean Development Bank, Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico. It is an honor for Venezuela to be able to participate in this 47th annual meeting of the Board of Government of the CDB, having the opportunity to address these words today in the midst of such complicated times for both the world and the region. The role of prestigious and important institutions of financial integration, such as this one where we are gathered today, help us to advance in the search for solutions to our problem through the promotion of a stronger policy and institutional framework as a strategic response to our previously identified challenge. We are all aware that the answers and solutions to our problems are in our region. Thus, financial support is essential for the realization of common projects. Therefore, Venezuela ratifies its engagement to this institution as well as to all international bodies that respect the rule of law, institutionalism, and state sovereignty. On behalf of the regional non-BMCs, I thank the government and the people of Turk and Caicos Island for its gracious hosting and for making our participation in this annual meeting more pleasant. And also thanks CDB management and staff members for all the hard work on behalf of the best and proper development of this meeting. We are gathered here today to review the CDB performance since last year's annual meeting, as well as to explore new and fresh ideas for the future of this important institution, looking forward not only for the coming year, but also further along. Our deliberations over the next 2 days should guide and inspire both management and staff members of the CDB for the many challenges the bank will face in the near future. Likewise, we must identify the optimal strategies to reduce the impact of the global crisis on the economic performance of the Caribbean region. In this regard, we acknowledge that there have been progress worth of commendation in terms of results and development of the bank's operation. In this vein, we encourage the harmonious economic growth, as well as the development of the member countries in the Caribbean and the promotion of economic cooperation and integration. Ergo, we highlighting the bank's continuing instrumental role in promoting inclusive development and support BMCs by pursuing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and each country's national development plan, while fulfilling the mandate of poverty reduction by creating new lending facilities that respond in an efficient and prompt manner to the financial needs and aspirations of the member states. We, the regional non-BMCs, restate our commitment to support the CDB as an engine of change in the Caribbean. In this meeting, we shall share a frank exchange of views, and we engage some practical evaluation and share thoughts on where we are and how we will get there through the critical challenge and opportunities faced by the region, taking into account the major multilateral agreements reached last year, continue to strengthen our capacities to assist BMCs in facing possible challenges. Thank you very much for your attention.
I'd like to thank the Governor for Venezuela for responding on behalf of the regional non-borrowing members. I now invite the Governor for the People's Republic of China, who will be responding on behalf of the non-regional members.
His Excellency Dr. John Freeman, the Governor of the Turkish and the Caicos Islands, Honorable Chairman of the Board of Governors, Honorable Ministers, Mr. President of the CDB, fellow governors, directors, representatives of international organizations, CDB management and staffs, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the non-regional member countries of the Caribbean Development Bank, I have the great honor and the pleasure of responding to the warm welcome of the Chairman of the Board of Governors. So let me start by expressing our sincere thanks to the peoples of the Turkish and Caicos Islands and their government for hosting the 47th annual meeting of CDB, and for the very gracious hospitality that have been extended to us since we landed in this beautiful island. My thanks also go to the management and the staff of the bank for excellency organization and a considerate arrangement. In 2016, faced on the new challenges arising from the plunge in commodity prices, shrinking global trade volumes, escalated fluctuation in global financial market, the borrowing member countries, supported by the CDB, registered a moderate economic growth and started the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for the Sustainable Development Goals. Moreover, the BMCs have continued to strengthen fiscal consolidation, enhance debt sustainability, and promote structural reforms, gradually laying a solid foundation for the sustainable economic growth in the years to come. We are delighted to see that in 2016, CDB had made a big progress in institutional reform, strengthen policy loan facilities, and support BMCs to solve fiscal and debt problems to make great contribution to the regional development. I would like to use this opportunity to congratulate the success of the Special Development Fund's 9th Replenishment Negotiation, SDF9, that I believe that the SDF9 will continue to play a positive role in supporting BMCs to achieve economic growth and poverty reduction in line with the CDB strategic plan of 2015 to 2019. The Chinese government has always supported CDB in helping BMCs to achieve growth and sustainable development, and support the bank to play a leading role in facilitating inclusive growth, poverty reduction, and regional integration based on its own comparative advantages. We support the bank's efforts to further broaden financial channels, promote public-private partnership, and increase investment in agriculture with focus on we support Hello? Yeah. We support the bank's efforts to further broaden financial channels, promote public-private partnership, and increase investment in agriculture with focus on high-tech agriculture. We also support the bank to help borrower member countries formulate and implement their respective new energy strategies, promote private sector settlement, youth education, and capacity building in governance. We also continue to support the bank to play a guiding role in helping BMCs achieve SDGs of 2030 agenda. Please permit me to use this opportunity to extend our sincere appreciation to the great efforts taken by the President of the CDB, Dr. Warren Smith, and his management team to continuously strengthen institutional capacity and promote economic and social development. I believe that CDB, under the leadership of the President and his team, will play a larger role in poverty reduction and social development in this region. Here, I would like to share an important event just happened 10 days ago. The Belt and Road International Cooperation Forum recently held the first summit meeting in Beijing. Although Latin America and the Caribbean are not directly covered in this initiative, but as an international cooperation platform, the Belt and Road is open to all countries like-minded. This initiative advocates the principles of joint discussion, common construction, benefit sharing, which are generally followed up by the international community and implemented in the international economic cooperation. Latin America and the Caribbean are important emerging markets as well as major trade partners of China. China welcomed the participation of Latin America and the Caribbean in the Belt and Road Initiative. We believe that the Belt and Road Initiative will provide the new opportunities for the cooperation between China and Latin America and the Caribbean. We are willing to strengthen mutual learning and further promote trade and investment and achieve mutual benefit and a win-win. China has always valued the friendly cooperation with the region, respect the development path chosen by the regional countries. China would like to work together with CDB and the regional members to explore new ways of collaboration and share China's development experiences for the purpose of sustainable social and economic development in the Caribbean region. Thank you for your kind attention.
And thank you to the Governor for the People's Republic of China for responding on behalf of the non-regional members. I'm going to invite us to be upstanding as we receive the President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Warren Smith, who will now deliver his statement.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Governor and Deputy Governor of the Turks and Caicos Islands, Premier and Chief Minister, members of Parliament, members of the Board of Governors and of the Board of Directors of the Caribbean Development Bank, members of the Diplomatic Corps, management and staff of the CDB, distinguished delegates, observers and guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. On the 4th of May this year, the management and staff of the Caribbean Development Bank welcomed the new Premier of the Turks and Caicos Islands, the Honorable Charlene Cartwright Robinson, to our headquarters in Barbados. In her capacity as chair of CDB's Board of Governors, the Premier took the opportunity to share with the management and staff her vision of people-centered development for her country, an approach which has also been embraced by our institution and the wider development fraternity. Madam Premier, we were all inspired by your spirit of optimism and the determination which you indicated to make a difference in the lives of the people of Turks and Caicos Islands during your tenure as leader of your country. I don't think it was any surprise to you, Madam Chair, but you certainly won the CDB staff. They especially liked your campaign slogan, the best man for the job. Please be assured, Madam Chair, that the government and people of the TCI will continue to have CDB's full support. Thank you also for hosting this 47th annual meeting of the CDB. Unfortunately, I will have to use the acronym Minister Gonzalez, because I refer to this institution on several occasions during this speech. We deeply appreciate your generosity for hosting this meeting, Madam Chair. Already we feel overwhelmed by the warm welcome and the courtesies which have been extended since we arrived in this spectacularly beautiful island of Providenciales. Under your chairmanship, we are confident that the deliberations which we have had this week will be fruitful. Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting of our Board of Governors takes place against the backdrop of an uncertain global environment that has the potential to derail the modest and tentative return to growth being experienced by our borrowing member countries. Although showing signs of increased buoyancy, global growth remains below pre-crisis levels and productivity growth is low. Both of these are largely Testing. Thank you. Both of these, ladies and gentlemen, are largely explained by weak productive investment. The slowdown in the rate of investment is a major constraint to world trade, which continued to decline in 2016, albeit at a slower pace. Undoubtedly, this served to propagate and reinforce the global slump in investment and, in turn, to stymie productivity growth. This is the kind of vicious cycle and context within which our borrowing member countries must chart a path forward. The prolonged period of weak international economic performance has contributed to the growing discontent with the inequitable distribution of costs and benefits of globalization and of international trade. This trend has strengthened the appeal of protectionism and inward-looking policies in several developed countries. On the current trajectory, it is imperative that our region continues to craft bold and innovative strategies to ensure that progress towards the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals remains on track. In the face of this emerging reality, what would be an appropriate response for Caribbean countries? Ladies and gentlemen, I will argue this morning that as they turn inward, we must turn outward. Our focus must now be on fully exploiting the opportunities for deepening trade and investment within existing and new regional markets. That is, CARICOM must become the stepping stone to penetrating those non-CARICOM We need to use CARICOM as the stepping stone for penetrating those non-CARICOM markets which still recognize international trade as a powerful underpinning for dynamic economic growth. Not surprisingly, ladies and gentlemen, Sir Arthur Lewis, Nobel laureate and the first president of CDB, appreciated the inevitability of a regional solution for the Caribbean. In 1965, he wrote, with his characteristic candor, "These islands did not start on the federal road in a fit of idleness. They started because it was clear that a federation is the only possible solution to their problems." Admittedly, ladies and gentlemen, the high bar of a Caribbean federation is probably not a realistic prospect in my lifetime. But our region has made progress in other forms of integration, such as the Caribbean Free Trade Association in 1968, the Caribbean Community and Common Market in 1973, and the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, which is just over 15 years old. CARICOM is designed to promote the development of the region through economic integration, functional and regional security cooperation, and foreign policy coordination. Functional cooperation predates CARICOM and is perhaps the best illustration of the value of a regional approach to development. In 1948, the establishment of the University College of the West Indies, now the University of the West Indies, or UWI, was the earliest form of regional cooperation in higher education in our part of the Caribbean. Most will agree with the transformative effects of UWI through its pioneering research in several fields and by consistently producing regional leaders in every sphere of social, political, and economic life. The actual value of UWI's contribution could not have been paid for by any one CARICOM country acting on its own. The takeaway here is that the benefits that have accrued to member states, especially from functional cooperation in health, in education, in security, disaster mitigation, and in the provision of common services across a wide range of human and social activity, have been significant and, most importantly, sustained. the furtherance of functional cooperation and the enhancement of the provision of common services are most relevant within the context of the fiscal crisis confronting a number of our Caribbean governments. But, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, improving functional cooperation will not on its own resolve the development challenges facing our region. Our economies need to grow, and they need to do so in a sustained and robust way. For this growth to become a reality, the highest priority must be given to improving the competitiveness of our economies through building a business-friendly environment. In that type of environment, enterprises will be incentivized to invest in productivity-enhancing employees and technologies, thereby enabling them to engage in regional and international trade. This has been our refrain at the CDB for some time and will feature prominently in my presentation this morning and in our discussions for the remainder of these meetings. Businesses which cannot compete cannot trade, and small economies which cannot trade in goods and services will not grow and be able to provide sustainable livelihoods for Caribbean people. Madam Chair, how do we explain this faith in regional connectivity to drive trade and economic growth? Where is the evidence of its efficacy? Successive studies have yielded mixed results on the question of a causal link between regional integration and economic growth. However, there is supporting evidence of a positive correlation between regional integration and the constituent variables of economic growth, such as investment, trade, and competitiveness. This correlation is simply too strong for us to ignore the transformative possibilities which can derive from deeper Caribbean economic integration. Several studies, including one done by the National University of Singapore, have concluded that regional trade agreements can positively affect foreign direct investment, for example. This impact occurs directly through investment provisions and indirectly through trade liberalization. The available evidence points to substantial improvement in the investment environment following the implementation of the 1998 Framework Agreement on the ASEAN Investment Area. This framework was designed to make ASEAN a competitive, conducive, and liberal area for investment. Further, increased intra-regional trade was encouraged as ASEAN investors began to receive the same treatment as local investors and as their access to local industries rose. Such reforms led to increased investment in the ASEAN countries as well as stimulated exports and imports generally. ASEAN's share in global FDI inflows rose from less than 2% in 2000 to nearly 5% in the mid-2000s and exceeded 6% in 2015, while total trade in the region almost doubled over the same period. Admittedly, ladies and gentlemen, the ASEAN integration process has taken place in a very different part of the world and involves larger countries. However, its integration framework is in some respects less advanced than CARICOM's. Yet ASEAN has achieved much better results than CARICOM in attracting investment flows and in expanding intra- and extra-regional trade. How do we then give real meaning to when they turn inward, we turn outward? Is it a pipe dream to believe that small economies with small populations and similar natural endowments are capable of creating a dynamic intra-regional trading bloc as a stepping stone to the wider international marketplace? What are some of the issues which need to be addressed, to ensure that a strategy of regional connectivity can be the best pathway to economic prosperity for Caribbean people. I will try to address each of these questions before closing my statement this morning. First, we need to realize that when we speak of trade, we are referring to the exchange of goods and services, not just merchandise trade. In a very insightful piece published in 2003, the late Dr. Trevor Farrell, former UWI professor of economics, observed that the first 30 years of CARICOM often seemed to be, as he described it, a labor of Sisyphus, if you get the point. However, Dr. Farrell acknowledged that in subsequent years, a shift had begun to take place, with service-based industries starting to lead the integration process. He was referring, of course, to the regionalization of Caribbean enterprises and the emergence of Caribbean multinationals alongside the growth of intra-regional portfolio investment and the evolution of a regional capital market. This development has continued apace, especially in tourism and financial services, as well as now in light manufacturing and retail industries. As Dr. Farrell pointed out, virtually all of the major conglomerates in the Caribbean operate regionally. For me, the regionalization of Caribbean conglomerates was inevitable. It occurred in part because of the small size of their domestic markets, and partly because of the need to manage risk through portfolio and geographic diversification. What has subsequently happened is that many of these firms are becoming sufficiently competitive to expand into the international marketplace in pursuit of growth, further diversification, and increased profitability. This outcome is good for the Caribbean and critical to our region's development. What is happening on the large conglomerate side of the Caribbean economy is also beginning to grow in much smaller industries like the cultural industries, which we heard a bit of this morning already, especially in the areas of music and other forms of entertainment. Music festivals and carnivals are now a growth industry in many Caribbean countries, attracting regional as well as extra-regional participants and financing. Individual artists and large carnival bands perform in many musical events that take place across the Caribbean and much further afield on virtually every continent. Increasingly, these artists and their management and production teams are leveraging social media and creatively using digital platforms to expand their market reach. This industry will only get larger as our regional tourist industry continues to grow. Caribbean tourism is the largest earner of foreign exchange. I'm arguing that Caribbean tourism is the largest earner of foreign exchange and the biggest employer of local and regional labor in most Caribbean countries. Tourism is a service industry, but it requires a vast array of inputs in order to meet the needs of its customers. Apart from demand for entertainers, the typical Caribbean hotel or attraction needs huge quantities of food, alcohol, fruit juices, furniture, and other inputs to be able to be competitive. This large export industry
Caribbean enterprises which have grown their businesses by moving cross-border to other regional and international markets. However, for this strategy to work, the arrangements which are enshrined in the revised Treaty of Shadows have to be implemented and have to be protected. Let me speak to some of the more urgent matters. Most of the CARICOM jurisdictions have enacted the provisions to remove over 450 legal and administrative barriers that initially stood in the way of the free movement of goods, services, capital, and labor in the region. The reality, though, is that the mere removal of restrictions does not a single market make. First, removal of such restrictions has not resulted in a sufficient and meaningful improvement in market access. This is because fundamental challenges still remain in the application of rules of origin, trade facilitation, the common external tariff, non-tariff barriers, and the resolution of disputes. Second, the movement of FATCA Act, which removes barriers to the rights of establishment, has not been enacted in many member states. The establishment of a single jurisdiction to allow for the equal treatment of business entities across CARICOM has also not been implemented. These are key mechanisms for supporting the development of regional enterprises by removing requirements of alien landholding licenses, for example, and eliminating the need for registering a CARICOM business in every single jurisdiction in which it wishes to operate. Such actions add to the cost of doing business, both in terms of time and monetary value. They also hamper the extent to which some CARICOM businesses can penetrate regional markets. Third, in 1995, CARICOM heads of government finally agreed to the free movement and consequent elimination of the need for work permits for a limited group of skilled workers, that is, selective free movement. Over 20 years hence, where is our region today? A recent report by the CSME, that is Caribbean Single Market and Economy Unit, noted that a total of 10 categories of persons now have the right to seek employment in other CARICOM member states without the need for a work permit. While legislation in the 12 CSME participating countries have all recognized the categories specifically identified in the revised treaty, I refer here to Article 45. Today, only Guyana and Jamaica have fully included the 10 categories of workers in their respective skilled nationals act. In addition to the failure to enact requisite legislation, there is the reality of a scarcity of skilled workers in the region to meet labor market needs. As such, regional companies are forced to fill vacancies with workers from outside of the region to the work permit. There is, therefore, urgent need of closer alignment between our region's education system and the skills requirements of the business community. Finally, there are valid concerns that the benefits of integration are unevenly distributed. This comes about partly from delays by member countries in meeting the commitments and obligations of the CARICOM single market. The treaty provides a number of dispute resolution mechanisms. For example, the Council of Trade and Development, the Competition Commission, and the Caribbean Court of Justice. These mechanisms can be used in situations where a member country concludes that it is being disadvantaged by selective application of the terms and conditions of the treaty. Carefully crafted dispute mechanisms are intended to, among other things, reduce the risk that disputes lead to conflict between the affected parties, enhance the legitimacy of the international treaty and international organization to which it is aligned,
and ensure that fairness prevails. The way in which signatories actually comply with the obligations of an international treaty is a critical determinant of the efficacy of that treaty. Utilizing the mechanisms and subjecting them to testing help to promote transparency of the process, as well as build confidence among stakeholders. In short, ladies and gentlemen, we need to test them. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, this morning I have argued that an intensified focus on international trade must be a central tenet of the Caribbean's growth strategy. I have also argued that the CARICOM market is the obvious launching pad for the region's deepened foray into the global marketplace. I am convinced that regional integration can be the Caribbean's secret weapon for unlocking economic growth and enhancing the prospect of greater prosperity for our people. The urgency for the adoption of this strategy is occurring at a time when there's clearly emerging a trend towards inward-looking policy platforms and a retreat from globalization in the United States, possibly in the United Kingdom and Europe, traditional trading partners of the Caribbean. The implications of this shift could be manifested in reduced international aid flows, diminished funding for multilateral development banks like the CDB, more difficult access to traditional markets, and the requirement to focus on new export alliances and trading partnerships. Existing trading arrangements could disappear or markets become more difficult to access, necessitating policy shifts right here in the Caribbean. Foremost amongst these shifts would have to be an intensification of the process of making our economies more attractive for productivity-enhancing investments. It would also require a so far elusive resolve amongst our regional leaders to implement in full and without further delay all of the outstanding provisions of the CSME. In short, our region is calling on its leaders to have a laser focus on doing what is right, not what is easy. One urgent corollary of this call to action is the requirement to expand the reach of CARICOM. Possible candidates for this broadening could be Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and the Dutch Caribbean territories to start. Another corollary is the reopening and conclusion of the stalled trade talks between Canada and CARICOM. We should also continue the outreach to our neighbors in Central and South America for deeper trade and economic cooperation. CDB, the region's development bank, has a vital role to play in the successful execution of this strategy. However, CDB's borrowing membership will have to become more diversified so that the concentration risk and interest rates can be reduced and its lending capacity enhanced. New membership will bring additional capital, both from new BMCs and from the new non-borrowing shareholders, which could be attracted by larger borrowing members. We will explore this proposition further when we meet with our governors in caucus tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture in our history, we have the opportunity to be the masters of our fate and the captains of our souls. Let us grasp it. Madam Chair, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith. We wish to record our sincerest thanks for your statement and for your leadership of the CDB, and we believe, as you do, that there is urgency for greater regional cooperation and strategy. We must do what is right, not necessarily what is easy. I now call on the reporting member, the Governor for Trinidad and Tobago, to give the report of the Procedures Committee.
Okay. Thank you very kindly, Madam Chairman. Governor of the Turks and Caicos Islands, Madam Chairman, governors and directors, President and members of the executive and staff of the CDB, Madam Chief Justice, members of the government and the Assembly, representatives of international organizations, members of the Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Madam Chair, Governors, the Procedures Committee met on Tuesday, May 23rd, 2017 at 9:15 a.m. and the report of this committee dated May 24th, 2017 is before you. I have the honor, Madam Chair, to table the report on behalf of the committee and move that the Board of Governors adopt the recommendations contained therein. Madam Chair, the Procedures Committee submits the following report. 1. Provisions relating to the conduct of the meeting. The committee recommends that the provisions relating to the conduct of the meeting embodied in paper BG 47-2 be approved. Madam Chair, may I indicate that the representatives of Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, also representing Haiti, the Bahamas, Barbados, Brazil, Canada, Colombia, the People's Republic of China, Germany, Guyana, Italy, Mexico, Antigua and Barbuda, also representing St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, also representing Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, also representing Grenada, Belize, also representing Anguilla, the British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, Montserrat and the Turks and Caicos Islands, Venezuela, and the United Kingdom were present at the meeting. The second item, Madam Chair, agenda for the meeting. The committee recommends the adoption of the provisional agenda as circulated in paper BG 47-3. Regarding the items on the agenda, the committee reports the following recommendations. A, annual report for 2016. Governors who wish to do so may comment on the annual report in their statements. B, audited financial statements and reports of the independent auditors 2016. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, BG 47-4, and the audited financial statements and reports of the independent auditors contained in the annual report, and recommends that the draft resolution entitled Audited Financial Statements and Reports of the Independent Auditors 2016 be adopted. C, allocation of net income for the year ended December 31st, 2016. Madam Chair, the committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, BG 47-5, and recommends that the draft resolution entitled Allocation of Net Income for the year ended December 31st, 2016 be adopted. D, administrative budget for the year ending December 31st, 2017. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, BG 47-6, entitled Administrative Budget for the year ending December 31st, 2017, and recommends that governors note the budget. Madam Chair, item E, expenses of governors and alternates attending meetings of the Board of Governors or committees thereof. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, BG 47-7, and recommends that the draft resolution entitled Expenses of Governors and Alternates Attending Meetings of the Board of Governors or committees thereof be adopted. Item F, place and date of the 48th 2018 annual meeting. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, BG 47-8, and recommends that the draft resolution entitled place and date of the 48th 2018 annual meeting be adopted. G, election of officers of the 48th 2018 annual meeting. Madam Chair, the committee recommends that the Governor for Grenada be elected as chairman and the governors for Mexico and Germany be elected as vice chairman of the next meeting, and that a draft resolution entitled Election of Officers of the Board of Governors be adopted. Madam Chair, permit me to read that resolution. And that resolution states, the Board of Governors resolves that the Governor for Grenada be elected as chairman and the governors for Mexico and Germany as vice chairman of the Board of Governors for the Caribbean Development Bank to hold their respective offices until the election of officers at the end of the 48th 2018 annual meeting of the Board of Governors. Madam Chair, item 3, any other business? There was no other business, Madam Chair, and there being no other business, the Procedures Committee ended at 9:30 a.m. This document is approved, Madam Chair, by your good self, Honorable Charlene Cartwright Robinson, Governor for the British Overseas Territories and Chairman of the Board of Governors, and Honorable Camille Robinson Regis, Governor for Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very kindly, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Governor. You have had an opportunity to hear the recommendations set out in the report of the Procedures Committee. Can I take it that the recommendations set out in this report are approved and that the resolutions before the board are adopted? Thank you. Thank you, governors, distinguished guests, members of the media. The 47th annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank is now ended. I invite governors to remain behind for an official photo at this time. We now adjourn.
The directors as well.
Directors as well as the governors. Thank you. This meeting is now adjourned.